We often imagine the Byzantine Empire as a golden age of art, religion, and power. But behind the shimmering mosaics and grand churches lies a much darker story, one written in blood and fear. This is the story of how entertainment became cruelty, and how the empire's grandest arenas were transformed into stages for some of history's most brutal spectacles. Welcome to a journey into the shadows of Byzantium. Today, we're not looking at emperors and icons. We're pulling back the curtain on a world where punishment was a public festival, and the line between justice and pure sadism was terrifyingly thin. Think of the Roman Colosseum, and you might picture gladiators, but the Byzantines took this legacy and twisted it into something uniquely their own. In the great hippodrome of Constantinople, the roar of the crowd wasn't just for chariot races. It was for public executions, staged to be as shocking and humiliating as possible. So, how did this happen? How did a society that prided itself on its Christian faith and sophisticated culture embrace such barbarity? The answer is complex, involving power, politics, and a deep-seated need to control a vast and often unstable empire. The arenas weren't just for punishing criminals. They were a message, a brutal demonstration of what happens to those who defy the emperor or the state. One of the most shocking forms of punishment was being thrown to wild beasts, a practice called damnatio de bestias. This wasn't a quick or merciful death. It was a carefully orchestrated show. Imagine a condemned prisoner, perhaps a political rival or a common thief, thrust into an arena with starving lions or bears. The crowd would watch, captivated and horrified, as the spectacle unfolded. This wasn't about justice. It was about instilling a primal fear into every citizen who watched. It was a reminder of the emperor's absolute power over life and death. But it didn't stop there. The Byzantines were creative in their cruelty. Public burnings were common, with victims tied to a stake in the middle of the hippodrome, their screams drowned out by the jeers of the crowd. Another gruesome method was the asterisk, ponocale asterisk, or punishment of the sack, reserved for those who committed parricide. The condemned was sewn into a leather sack with a dog, a rooster, a viper, and a monkey, and then thrown into the sea. The symbolism was as important as the act itself. A person who had destroyed their family was now confined with animals and cast out from the human world. These weren't just isolated events. They were part of the social fabric. Public executions were often timed to coincide with festivals or holidays, turning a day of celebration into a day of state-sanctioned violence. The authorities understood the psychology of the crowd. By making these punishments a spectacle, they blurred the line between entertainment and intimidation. The thrill of the show was mixed with a chilling reminder of the state's power. Why would people watch this? For many, it was a grim form of entertainment, a break from the monotony of daily life. For others, it was a moral lesson, a public confirmation that crime leads to a horrific end. But on a deeper level, these spectacles served to desensitize the population. When you witness extreme violence regularly, it begins to seem normal. The horror fades, and what's left is a society that accepts cruelty as a necessary part of maintaining order. The psychological impact on Byzantine society was profound. On one hand, it reinforced the social hierarchy. The emperor and the elite were the ones orchestrating the shows, while the common people were the audience. This created a dynamic of power and submission. The message was clear: obey, or you could be the next one in the arena. On the other hand, it created a culture of fear. This wasn't just fear of punishment, but a deeper, more pervasive anxiety. The threat of public humiliation and a brutal death hung over everyone. Historians have noted how this climate of fear could be exploited for political gain. An emperor could eliminate rivals by accusing them of a crime and subjecting them to a public theatrical execution, solidifying his power and terrifying any other potential dissenters into silence. The arena was also a political stage. The choice of punishment, the person being executed, and the timing of the event were all carefully calculated political moves. For example, during times of political instability, an emperor might stage a particularly gruesome series of executions to project an image of strength and control. When a popular general was seen as a threat, he might be accused of treason and subjected to a public humiliation, like being paraded through the streets before his execution. This wasn't just about getting rid of an enemy. It was about destroying their legacy and their reputation in the public eye. Think about the sheer theatricality of it all. Special machinery might be used to hoist victims into the air. Scenery and props could be used to reenact the crime, turning the execution into a morbid play. The condemned were often dressed in specific costumes to signify their crime or their fallen status. Every detail was designed to maximize the impact on the audience, to make the event memorable and its message unforgettable. As the empire evolved, so did its methods of punishment. While the grand spectacles with wild beasts became less common over the centuries, largely due to Christian influence and the expense, other forms of public cruelty continued. Mutilation, for instance, became a favored punishment. Blinding, cutting off a nose, or amputating a hand were common sentences. This was seen as a more merciful alternative to death, but it served a similar purpose. A person who had been blinded or mutilated was a walking advertisement for the emperor's justice, a permanent, living reminder to others of the consequences of crime or rebellion. So, when we look back at the Byzantine Empire, it's crucial to see both sides of the coin. The glory and the horror, the magnificent art and the calculated cruelty. The Hippodrome of Constantinople was a place of triumph and entertainment, but it was also a slaughterhouse, a theater of terror designed to keep an empire in line. These spectacles revealed the dark underbelly of a civilization, showing us that power, fear, and entertainment have been intertwined in a deadly dance throughout human history. The legacy of the Byzantine arenas is a sobering reminder of how easily humanity can be swayed by the spectacle of cruelty, and how thin the veneer of civilization can truly be. Thanks for watching. If you found this glimpse into the dark side of history fascinating, make sure to like this video and subscribe for more deep dives into the stories you thought you knew. Let me know in the comments what other hidden histories you'd like to explore. See you next time.